If you believe the perfect words will bring her back, you're already losing. She doesn't return for speeches or promises. She returns for who you've become in silence. This isn't about tricks. It's about psychology, power, and transformation. A man who evolves quietly becomes unforgettable, even when she tries to forget. And if you understand this, she will come back, not because you begged, but because you changed. Before we dive into the steps, drop your thoughts in the comments. Hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss the mindset that makes you unstoppable. 1. Stop trying to be understood and start being unavailable. When a woman walks away, most men make the same mistake. They scramble to explain themselves. They pour out their feelings, hoping for closure. They write long messages, hoping to be heard. Deep down, what they really want is not clarity, it's to be chosen again. But here's the harsh truth. The harder you try to make her understand, the more desperate you appear. You don't look strong. You look like a man who cannot bear being left behind. And the moment you begin debating your worth instead of living it, your value drops. A man's strength is not proven by words, it is revealed by presence, discipline, and silence. Let's be blunt. Words do not bring her back. Availability does not spark curiosity. You could send the perfect text, promise the world, even beg for another chance, but if she is emotionally detached, none of it will matter to her. It will all sound like background noise. The only thing that shifts her perception is contrast. She expected you to chase. She expected you to argue. She expected you to cling. But instead she feels nothing. No explanation. No emotional access. Just the sudden silence of your absence. And that silence, it unsettles her. Not because it is cruel, but because it is powerful. She realizes that the emotional grip she thought she had no longer holds. You have vanished, not in anger, not in bitterness, but with quiet strength. This is where so many men fail. They believe that staying present, staying kind, staying endlessly available proves loyalty. But to a woman who has already withdrawn, it only confirms her control over your emotions. That is not strength, it is surrender. So stop trying to be understood. Stop feeding her attention. Withdraw in every way that used to keep her comfortable. You don't need to be harsh. You don't need to slam doors. But you do need to remove yourself from her emotional radar. And when you do, something shifts. She no longer feels your presence, and that absence, when carried with calmness and dignity, becomes haunting. She starts replaying memories, not because you pleaded for them, but because you no longer exist in her world the way you once did. The man who learns to become unavailable becomes a mystery, and in the psychology of attraction, nothing is more powerful than mystery. To create a void so powerful, it echoes. Most men believe distance is their enemy. The moment she pulls away, they chase, they text, they explain, they send gifts, anything to close the gap. But here's the reality, they never grasp. A woman only feels your absence when you stop rushing to fill the space. That is what the void is about. It's not just about stepping back physically. It's about withdrawing your energy, your emotional access, your constant attention. When what once filled her days suddenly disappears, the emptiness doesn't stay quiet. It echoes. It reminds her of the weight you carried in her life, not through words, but through contrast. The mistake most men make is confusing space with weakness. They think, if I don't act, I'll lose her forever. But true power doesn't chase. True power stands still and holds position. It lets the silence do the talking. It allows her to feel the shift without interference. Here's how you live this principle. Stop watching her stories. Stop liking her posts. Don't respond to half-hearted breadcrumbs or late-night pings. Don't send just checking-in texts. In fact, remove yourself completely from every emotional exchange. And understand, this is not punishment. It is preservation. You are protecting your dignity, not playing games. Women are tuned into energy more than explanations. They don't come back because you crafted the perfect apology. They come back because your silence forced them to face what life feels like without your presence. The man who keeps orbiting her messaging, watching, hovering, he is easy to forget. But the man who disappears with calm confidence becomes unforgettable. His absence turns into a presence of its own. It creates questions she can't answer. And that uncertainty works more powerfully than any speech could. So create that void. Let it stretch wide. Let her feel the space you once filled with consistency, leadership, and masculine grounding. Don't rush to ease her discomfort. Don't try to patch the silence. Remain steady. Remain still. Because, over time, that space begins to echo louder than your words ever could. The longer you hold position, the more she notices what's gone. And when she finally feels the void you left behind, it won't be your words she remembers. It will be the man who had the strength to disappear. 3. Become the man she believed you would never be without her. Here's the hard truth when most women walk away. They expect you to collapse. They think you'll spiral into chaos, chase them endlessly, or break apart without their presence. And when you do exactly that, when you beg, when you crumble, you confirm everything she already assumed about you. But there's another path. Instead of breaking, you rise. Instead of pleading for her return, you evolve in her absence. And when you do, you shatter the narrative she built in her mind about your worth. If your goal is to reclaim her attention, don't waste energy on fixing the relationship. Turn that focus inward. Fix the man you became inside of it. Ask yourself the tough questions. Where did I lose my edge? Where did I stop honoring my standards? Did I neglect my body, my mission, my values? Now is the time to rebuild. Now is the moment to rise into a man she never imagined you could be without her. The man who doesn't beg for validation. The man who sharpens his body through discipline. The man who feeds his mind with knowledge. Who builds his life around purpose, not approval. A man so consumed by his mission that even if she comes back, he may not take her back. Here's the psychological twist. Women are irresistibly drawn to growth, not staged growth, not performative progress, but real evolution. And it becomes even more magnetic when it happens without them, when she sees you calmer, sharper, stronger, and none of it tainted by bitterness. That contrast ignites doubt within her. She begins to question her decision. She begins to watch quietly. She begins to regret. But here's the warning. This cannot be faked. You can't pretend to change for the sake of pulling her back in, because pretense always cracks under pressure. The only way forward is to grow beyond the need for her return altogether. The goal is not revenge, it is rebirth. You rebuild your frame, your energy, your presence, to a level where no one else defines your value. And when she witnesses that evolution, whether in a month or a year, it will be undeniable. You won't need to prove anything. You won't need to argue your worth. Your life will speak for itself. And she will realize the man she left behind is not the man who stands before her now. 4. Let stillness speak louder than her doubts. You don't need to raise your voice to be heard. In fact, sometimes the loudest message is silence itself. When faced with distance, most men panic. They start explaining, pleading, trying to fix what isn't broken by logic, but only felt through presence. Here's the truth. If your energy is anxious, she feels it. If your presence is unstable, she will retreat further. What you need is stillness. Stillness is not passivity. It's not doing nothing out of weakness. It is the discipline of appearing quiet on the outside while everything within you is aligning. It is the art of holding yourself with calm control when every part of you wants to react. Stillness is a weapon. It is emotional mastery, disguised as indifference. And the key is this: it cannot be faked. You're not pretending to be calm. You are learning to become calm. When you reach that state, you shift from predictable to unpredictable. You become a question mark. And in psychology, the mind is far more drawn to uncertainty than to certainty. Think about it. Women don't keep thinking about the man who always reacts. They think about the man who didn't. The one who broke the pattern. The one who refused to be pulled into her script. This is how you become unforgettable. You stop feeding the story. You stop showing up in the ways she expects. You stop letting her set the pace of your emotions. Stillness doesn't mean coldness. It doesn't mean shutting down or ignoring life. It means you no longer chase. But you also don't hate. You don't react. But you don't freeze either. You move with intention, with strength, with grace. And here's what will happen. She will test it. She might poke at you, drop crumbs of attention, or try to bait you into reacting. But every time you resist, every time you remain steady, you accumulate power. Herr Dut grow kita, while your presence grows louder even without words. In a world overflowing with emotional volatility, the calm man stands out like a mountain in the storm. He doesn't try to control everything. He doesn't beg for validation. He simply is. And that kind of stillness becomes a presence. She cannot escape something she feels deeply, even when you're nowhere near her. 5. Make her regret your absence, not miss your messages. Let's be clear about something most men confuse. She doesn't truly long for your texts. She's not aching for the good morning reminders, the long explanations, or the constant apologies. What she comes to miss, if you handle this with discipline, isn't your words at all. It's the calm strength, direction, and masculine steadiness you once brought into her life. But here's the paradox. The more you try to remind her of those qualities, the faster you erase them. Every extra message, every desperate explanation, every attempt to chase her attention, those things strip away your power. Worse, they convince her that walking away was the right decision. The shift happens when you no longer fight for space in her mind. You don't need to withdraw with anger, nor should you play silent games just to manipulate her. What you must do is something far more difficult. Hold your ground in quiet, consistent absence. Allow her to feel, on her own, what life is like without your presence stabilizing her world. Understand this. Women rarely regret losing a man who still makes himself emotionally available. Regret only takes root when access is gone, when her calls go unanswered, when her thoughts echo in the silence. When doubt creeps in during late nights, that's when the weight of your absence strikes hardest. This isn't about cruelty. It's not about revenge. It's about creating the only space where she can face her own choices. You don't need to argue your value. You don't need to justify who you are. The law of emotional gravity does the work, because in the end, she doesn't regret the absence of your texts. She regrets losing the man who no longer sends them. 6. Don't close the gap. Make her cross it. Most men sabotage themselves here. The instant they sense distance, they rush to erase it. She takes a step back, and he sends a text. She goes quiet, and he plans some dramatic move to win her attention. But that instinct, that panic around space, is exactly what erodes your strength. When you immediately close the gap, you're sending one loud message: I can't stand without you. And nothing drains your value faster than making her believe you need her presence just to remain steady. The truth is, power is found in stillness. It's in letting the distance remain. It's in holding your ground instead of scrambling to close the void. Let her wander. Let her feel the silence. Let her wrestle with the emptiness she created when she pulled away. If she has the desire and respect, she will eventually cross that space on her own. And here's the paradox. If you chase her across the divide, you actually rob her of the very process that would have drawn her back. By removing her need to move toward you, you deny her the chance to choose you again. The gap is not the enemy. It's the proving ground. It tests whether she values the man waiting on the other side enough to bridge it herself. So don't close it for her. Don't collapse into fear or rush to repair the silence. Stand still. Stay calm. Remain unshaken. If she truly sees your worth, she will take that step across. And only then will she respect the man who didn't beg, didn't chase, and didn't break his own power by trying to close what was never his to close. 7. Trust the power of time, not talk. 7. Trust the power of time, not talk. This is where most men make a critical mistake. They believe if they act fast enough, if they text at the right moment, or say the perfect words before she forgets, they can somehow change the outcome. But words alone cannot undo what has been decided. In fact, chasing with constant explanations usually makes things worse. What men often overlook is that time itself is the strongest ally they have, not urgency, not clever phrasing, but silence stretched over days and weeks. When you stop talking, when you remove yourself from her world completely, something subtle but powerful begins to happen. The silence that once seemed insignificant starts to grow heavy. At first, she might not notice. The first day or two, she may even feel relieved, convinced she's made the right choice. But then time works like a slow tide. Curiosity begins to creep in. What is he thinking? Why hasn't he said anything? How does he seem fine without me? These questions don't come from anything you said. They come from what you didn't say, your absence. That's when the emotional shift begins. When she no longer has your constant presence, she is forced to face the silence on her own. And in that silence, her mind fills the blanks with memory, doubt, and longing. If you speak too soon, you break this process, you reset the clock, and she no longer feels the weight of what was lost. But if you trust time, something different unfolds. She begins to realize that the man who once gave her consistency, calmness, and strength is no longer accessible. And that realization, over weeks, not minutes, creates the deepest form of regret. More importantly, this isn't just about her. Time is also your ally. It gives you space to heal, to grow, to remember your worth. Instead of obsessing over her, you focus on becoming the man who no longer needs to chase. Because the truth is, when you stop trying to fill the silence, time begins to speak louder than any words you could send. So let the days pass. Let the weeks go by. Let her sit with her decision. Because if she comes back, it won't be because you begged. It will be because time revealed what you never had to say. 8. Become the man who doesn't need her return. Here's the paradox. Most men never understand. The harder you chase her return, the further she runs. But the moment you release the need, when you stop making her the center of your future, everything shifts. Neediness repels. Self-sufficiency attracts. This isn't simply about ignoring her. It's about liberation. It's about remembering that your wholeness cannot be outsourced to another person's opinion, attention, or validation. Think about it. Who are you when she isn't watching? Who are you when no one checks in? Who are you when there's nothing left to prove? That version of you, the man who doesn't require an audience, who doesn't wait for anyone's permission, is the most powerful man alive. Why? Because he evolves not to impress, but because evolution is his very nature. This is the core of masculine strength. You don't grow to win her back. You grow because stagnation is death to your spirit. You grow because life demands it. And ironically, that's when she feels the difference. Women sense this change instinctively. It isn't loud. It isn't posted all over social media, but it is undeniable. You begin walking with a presence that doesn't beg for recognition. You speak with a tone that doesn't crave approval. You live with a rhythm that belongs to you and no one else. And here's what usually happens. The very moment you no longer care whether she comes back, she starts to notice, not because you tried to prove something, but because you stopped trying altogether. If she does return, she will face a man she no longer controls. That's the real victory. Not her return, not her approval, but your self-respect. Understand this. A man who builds, who moves, who creates without waiting, that man is unstoppable. If she comes back, fine. But if she doesn't, you've already won. Because you've remembered who you were before the attachment. This is what freedom looks like. Not hoping, not waiting, just living fully, becoming fully, and embodying the man you were always meant to be. So, become him. Not for her, not for anyone, but for yourself. Because when you no longer need her return, you've already returned to the strongest version of yourself. 9. Let her feel the void. When a relationship ends, most men make the same mistake. They look back at the effort they poured in the late-night calls, the gifts, the long talks, the sacrifices. They obsess over whether they did enough, or if one more gesture might have changed the outcome. But here's the truth. Effort is not what keeps someone by your side. Presence is. What lingers in her mind is not the checklist of what you did right. It's the absence of what she no longer has access to: your presence, your grounding energy, your masculine calm. She doesn't miss the calls. She doesn't miss the gifts. She misses the man who once stood like a foundation in her life, the man who moved with certainty, who didn't doubt himself, who carried stability like armor. And the moment you go silent, that version of you becomes scarce. And scarcity always creates value. This is where most men fail. They rush to remind her of their worth. They explain. They plead. They try to prove what they already gave. But in doing so, they erase the very scarcity that would have made her feel the void. The strongest move is not proving, but removing. Remove yourself from her world. Remove the comfort she once leaned on. Remove the masculine presence she thought would always be there. Let her feel the emptiness where your certainty once lived. Let her wonder where that grounded man went. Let her sit in the silence and slowly recognize how much she underestimated what she had. And here's the key: don't interrupt that process. Don't try to speed it up with a text or a phone call. Don't chase validation that only weakens your frame. Disappear with dignity, not as punishment, not as a game, but as a man who values himself enough to step back and let reality do the teaching. Because when a woman truly feels the void, she doesn't think about the effort you gave. She feels the loss of the presence she can no longer touch. And in that space, she will finally understand the weight of what she let slip away. 10. When she comes back. Don't be the same man she left. There's a critical mistake most men make when she eventually circles back. They welcome her as if nothing has changed. Same emotions on display. Same attachment. Same reactive energy that pushed her away in the first place. But here's the truth. If you've handled the silence with strength, if you've grown during the absence, chances are high she will return. The real question isn't if she comes back. It's who will she find when she does. Will she see the same man she once left behind? Or will she encounter a man so transformed that she barely recognizes him? You must not remain unchanged. The point of all this isn't simply to get her back. It's to elevate yourself beyond the man who needed her validation in the first place. This is about growth, about reinvention, a man who has reclaimed his independence, rebuilt his confidence, and grounded himself in clarity. Doesn't just wait for someone to re-enter his life. He creates a new life so powerful that her return feels almost irrelevant. When she comes back, let her feel like a visitor in a world she no longer owns. A world where you are centered, calm, decisive, and free. No longer hooked on her attention, no longer desperate for her apology. You're not seeking revenge, and you're not playing games. You've simply become a man who no longer needs her presence to feel complete, and that shift is magnetic. She will sense it in your voice, steady and calm. She will notice it in your choices, firm and unapologetic. She will feel it in your presence, confident without arrogance, self-assured without clinging. That's when curiosity turns into something deeper. She begins to see what she lost, not just in you, but in herself, forever underestimating your worth. Because nothing shakes a woman more than realizing the man she once dismissed has now grown into someone she no longer deserves. That's not her victory. That's yours. So when she comes back, and she will make sure she doesn't meet the same man she left, let her meet the evolved version, the man reborn from detachment and discipline. That's the true power, not her return, but your reinvention. If this message struck a chord with you, don't keep it to yourself. Share it with someone who needs the reminder. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Hit the like button and subscribe for more content where timeless psychology meets real strength. Every interaction builds a community of men choosing discipline over chaos. And before you leave, hold on to this truth. Silence is not surrender. It is transformation. It is the sign of a man who no longer reacts, but evolves. Remember, your calm presence is not weakness. It is proof of the power you've built within.